September 26th, 2011, 10:22 p.m., security cameras at Simon Fraser University in Surrey, British Columbia, capture a young woman walking confidently through the campus corridors. She's smiling, laughing with her friend, completely unaware that someone is watching her every move. 19-year-old Maple Batalia has no idea that in just under 3 hours, she'll be fighting for her life in a parking garage and losing that fight in the most tragic way imaginable. What you're watching right here are the final moments of a rising star, a straight-A student with dreams of becoming a doctor, caught on camera before everything goes dark. But here's what makes this case truly chilling. The person hunting her that night, he'd been there for hours, waiting, watching, armed with weapons. And the justice system's response to what he did, well, that's gonna make you outraged. Maple's family had come to Canada from India seeking a better life, and by all accounts, they'd found it. Her parents named her Maple as a tribute to their adopted country, to the beautiful tree that symbolizes Canada itself. It was a name full of hope, full of promise, and Maple lived up to that promise every single day. By 19, this young woman was already making waves. She maintained a perfect grade point average while pursuing pre-med studies at Simon Fraser University. But academics weren't her only passion. Maple had caught the acting bug, and she was good at it. Really good. At 17, she'd landed a commercial for a pharmacy coffee shop. At 19, she appeared in the teen comedy Diary of a Wimpy Kid and scored a role in the TV series The Secret Circle, which even featured her first on-screen kiss. But like so many young women, Maple's biggest mistake was dating the wrong guy. Enter Gary Dhaliwal. On the surface, he seemed decent enough. Maple's family initially approved of the relationship, but as it turns out, Gary had a dark side that would eventually consume everything in its path. He was possessive, controlling, and when Maple discovered he'd been cheating on her, she did what any self-respecting woman would do. She ended the relationship. That's when Gary's true nature revealed itself. After the breakup, Gary became obsessed. We're not talking about a few sad text messages or the occasional phone call. We're talking about a full-blown stalking campaign that should have landed him behind bars long before September 26. Over 2,000 calls to Maple's phone. 2,000! Let that sink in. This wasn't a heartbroken ex trying to reconnect. This was a predator who viewed Maple as his property, and he was spiraling into a rage that would culminate in murder. Just days before her death, Gary's jealousy exploded in a very public way. Maple was having coffee with her longtime friend Diltaj Dillon at a Tim Hortons cafe when Gary burst through the door. Security cameras captured the whole thing. Gary spotted Maple sitting with Dillon, and his face twisted with rage. He stormed over and took a swing at Dillon right there in the cafe. Maple, trying to defuse the situation and protect her friend, actually escorted Gary out to the parking lot. She got into his car, and they drove away together. When she told Dillon about it later, she was shaken to her core. Dillon begged her to get a restraining order. Looking back now, we all wish she had, but hindsight is 20/20, and Maple probably never imagined that the boy she once cared about would actually kill her. She thought wrong. September 25th, 2011, 10 a.m. Two men walk into an Avis rental car location in Surrey. Security cameras capture them clearly. The first man approaches the counter and presents his identification. His name, Gursimar Bedi. He's 20 years old, a student at Simon Fraser University, and he's about to rent a white Dodge Charger. But here's the kicker. He's not renting it for himself. The second man hanging back near the entrance, that's Gary Dhaliwal, and he's got plans for that car. Dark plans. Bedi completes the paperwork, gets the keys, and moments later, the two young men drive off in the white Dodge. What Bedi claims he didn't know at the time was that Gary had just purchased a gun and a knife. What Bedi definitely did know was that Gary was obsessed with tracking Maple's movements, because for the next day and a half, Gursimar Bedi would serve as Gary's eyes and ears in a stalking operation that would end in murder. And here's where the justice system completely failed Maple Batalia. But we'll get to that injustice in a moment, because right now, we need to talk about Maple's final hours. September 26th, 2011. Evening. Maple makes plans to study at the Simon Fraser University Library. It's a normal Monday night for a dedicated student. She arrives at campus around 10 p.m. with a friend, ready to put in some serious study time. The library at SFU's Surrey campus stays open late, accommodating students who need quiet space to focus. Maple settles in, surrounded by her textbooks and notes, completely focused on her future. But outside in the parking garage, Gary Dhaliwal is also focused on her. At 8:07 p.m., nearly 2 hours before Maple even arrives, security cameras capture a white Dodge Charger entering the university parking structure. The car circles, it parks, it waits. Inside that car, Gary Dhaliwal sits with murder on his mind. He's armed, he's angry, and he's been planning this for days. Gursamar Bedi, his so-called friend, has been helping him track Maple's movements. When Maple arrives at the library, Bedi apparently informs Gary. Now Gary knows exactly where she is. All he has to do is wait. And wait, he does. For 4 agonizing hours. Inside the library, Maple has no idea she's being hunted. Security footage shows her laughing, studying, enjoying herself with classmates. At one point, the camera captures her smiling broadly, completely at ease. This is Maple in her element, surrounded by friends, working toward her dreams, living her life. But then, at 1:01 a.m., the library closes. Maple packs up her things and heads for the exit with 3 male friends, including Diltaj Dillon. The group walks together through the corridors, down the stairs, heading toward the parking garage. Surveillance cameras track their movement through the building. They're talking, relaxed, with no sense of danger. And this is where those cameras become both a blessing and a curse for investigators. As Maple and her friends approach the parking lot exit, one security camera captures them clearly. But then, in what can only be described as the worst possible timing, the camera automatically swivels away. These cameras were programmed to rotate on preset patterns, covering different areas at different times. And at the exact moment Maple Batalia needed surveillance coverage the most, the camera turned its mechanical eye away from her. By the time it rotated back, it was already too late. At 1:04 a.m., 911 operators in Surrey start receiving calls.
Hi there, what's your emergency? I just wanted to report that I heard about 5 gunshots.
What's your emergency, sir?
I just heard gunshots.
The calls are coming from all around Simon Fraser University. Dozens of concerned witnesses reporting the same thing. Multiple gunshots fired in the campus parking structure. Surrey police dispatch every available unit to the scene. Sergeant Kevin Jeffrey is one of the first officers to arrive. He races up to the 3rd floor of the parking garage, unsure if the shooter is still active, unsure what he's about to find. And then he sees her. Maple Batalia is lying between 2 vehicles, critically injured. She's been shot 3 times. But that's not all. The back of her head bears multiple severe wounds. 11 of them. Someone didn't just want Maple dead. They wanted to make absolutely certain she couldn't survive. Incredibly, against all odds, Maple is still breathing. Barely. Paramedics rush her to the nearest hospital where doctors fight desperately to save her life. For hours, the Batalia family waits in the ICU waiting room. Maple's father, her mother, her older sister Rosaline, and a family friend sit together, hoping for a miracle. But at 9:07 p.m., the miracle doesn't come. Doctors emerge with the news no parent should ever hear. 19-year-old Maple Batalia is dead. She fought for nearly 17 hours after the attack, but her injuries were simply too severe. The beautiful, brilliant young woman with the entire world ahead of her is gone. Sergeant Jeffrey has the horrible task of delivering the news to Maple's family.
Shots fired here at this area on the 3rd floor of this parkade. Uniformed officers attended, and they did locate an adult female, 19 years of age.
What happens next will haunt him for years. Maple's mother grabs the back of his head, pulls him down until their foreheads are touching, and screams directly into his face, "Bring me vengeance." Her pain is so raw, so visceral, that everyone in that waiting room feels it. Maple's father can barely speak through his sobs. This was his precious jewel. His daughter, who was going to become a doctor, who was going to make the family proud, who represented everything they'd sacrificed for when they left India for a better life in Canada. And now she's dead, murdered in a campus parking garage by someone who thought he owned her. The investigation kicks into high gear immediately. Sergeant Jeffrey knows the first 48 hours are critical. He assembles a team of detectives and forensic specialists. They have security footage to review, hundreds of hours of it. And somewhere in that footage, they hope to find Maple's killer. Detective Adam McIntosh, a specialist in audio and video analysis, begins the painstaking work of reviewing every camera angle from that night. They start with the library entrance, trying to establish a timeline. When did Maple arrive? Who was she with? Did anyone follow her inside? The footage shows Maple entering around 10:22 p.m. with a female friend. They're both smiling, casual, completely unaware of any danger. The camera inside the library captures Maple studying, laughing with classmates. She looks happy, safe, but then that library camera does something strange. It suddenly swings away from Maple's study area as if someone manually redirected it. Investigators initially suspect tampering, but they quickly realize these cameras are on automatic rotation. It's just terrible luck. They switch to the exit cameras. At 1:01 a.m., Maple leaves the library with 3 young men. One of them is quickly identified as Diltaj Dillon, her longtime friend from high school. The group walks together toward the parking structure. Everything seems normal, and then the parking lot camera swivels away at the worst possible moment. Frustrated but determined, detectives start reviewing footage from cameras positioned around the university perimeter. And that's when they spot it. A white Dodge Charger, speeding away from campus at 1:04 a.m., right when the 911 calls started flooding in. The car is moving so fast that the license plate is too blurry to read clearly. But investigators catch a break. They review earlier footage from the parking structure and spot the same white Dodge Charger entering at 8:07 p.m., hours before Maple even arrived. Someone had been waiting for her. Now comes the detective work. Surrey police contact every rental car agency in British Columbia, specifically asking about white Dodge Chargers rented around the time of the murder. It takes time, nearly a full year actually, but eventually they get a hit. Avis Car Rental, September 25th, 10:32 a.m. Security cameras show 2 young men entering the rental office. The first man, who handles the paperwork, is identified as Gursamar Bedi, a student at Simon Fraser University. But he's not alone. The second man, hanging back near the entrance, is someone investigators recognize from their canvas of Maple's social circle. His name is Gary Dhaliwal, Maple's ex-boyfriend. When detectives look deeper into Gary's background, alarm bells start ringing. He has a criminal record. Multiple people describe him as obsessed with Maple. And when they interview Maple's cousin, they learn something chilling. Gary had been stalking Maple relentlessly since their breakup. Over 2,000 phone calls, constant text messages, showing up wherever she went. The Tim Hortons incident, captured on camera, shows Gary's violent jealousy in full display. Days before her murder, he'd physically attacked Maple's friend Dylan simply for having coffee with her. Detectives bring Gursamar Bedi in for questioning. They lay out what they know. He rented the car, he was with Gary at the time, and that same car was used in Maple's murder. A shell casing found under the hood of the returned Dodge matches the caliber of bullets that killed Maple. But Bedi refuses to talk. He sits in that interrogation room, stone-faced, offering nothing. His loyalty to Gary, or perhaps his fear of self-incrimination, keeps him silent. The forensic evidence, however, speaks volumes. That shell casing is the smoking gun. Literally. Whoever fired those shots had been inside that white Dodge Charger. And Gary Dhaliwal's fingerprints are all over this case, metaphorically and literally. On December 1st, 2012, more than a year after Maple's murder, police finally make their arrests. Gary Dhaliwal and Gursamar Bedi are taken into custody. And on the very first day of the hearing, Gary does something unexpected. He confesses. The full story comes out, and it's even more calculated than investigators suspected. Gary couldn't handle the breakup. Despite being the one who cheated on Maple, despite being the one who ruined their relationship, he was consumed by jealousy and rage when she moved on. He saw her as his property. In his twisted mind, if he couldn't have her, nobody could. So he bought a gun, he bought a knife, and he enlisted his friend Gursamar Bedi to help him track her movements. On September 26th, Gary had Bedi rent the white Dodge Charger to avoid being directly connected to the crime. He then drove to Simon Fraser University and waited. Bedi apparently served as his lookout, confirming when Maple arrived at the library. And then Gary sat in that parking garage for 4 hours, nursing his rage, planning his attack. When Maple finally emerged from the library just after 1 a.m., Gary watched as she separated from her friends. He waited until she was alone, in a blind spot between the surveillance cameras. And then he approached her. What happened next was devastating beyond words. Gary shot Maple 3 times, but shooting her wasn't enough to satisfy his rage. He then attacked her in the back of the head 11 times. 11 times. He wanted to make absolutely certain she was dead. Then he jumped back into the white Dodge and sped away, leaving Maple mortally wounded on the cold concrete of that parking garage. Here's where this case takes a turn that will infuriate you. Because what happens next demonstrates everything that's broken about the justice system when it comes to violence against women. Gursum Arbedi, the accomplice who rented the car, who helped stalk Maple, who knew exactly what was happening and did nothing to stop it or report it afterward, receives a sentence of 22 months in prison. 22 months. Less than 2 years for helping facilitate a brutal murder. And it gets worse. He didn't even serve the full sentence. Betty was released early after serving just 18 months. Think about that. A young woman is stalked, hunted, shot 3 times, and wounded 11 times in the head. And the man who made that murder possible by renting the car and serving as a lookout walks free after 18 months. Maple's family was devastated. The community was outraged. But the justice system had spoken. As for Gary Dhaliwal, he was initially charged with first-degree murder. The evidence was overwhelming. He'd purchased weapons days before the attack. He'd rented a car through a friend to avoid detection. He'd waited for 4 hours in a parking garage, armed and ready. He'd attacked Maple in a calculated manner, using both a gun and a knife. This was textbook premeditated murder. First degree, no question. But on March 3rd, 2016, Gary's conviction was reduced to second-degree murder. The prosecution agreed to the plea deal, and suddenly, instead of life in prison without the possibility of parole, Gary Dhaliwal became eligible for parole after 21 years. Let me break this down. Gary will be in his mid-40s when he can first apply for parole. He gets the possibility of freedom. He gets the chance to live a life, start over, maybe even have a family of his own someday. Maple Batalia died at 19. She doesn't get a second chance. She doesn't get to become a doctor. She doesn't get to continue her acting career. She doesn't get to fall in love again, get married, have children. Her dreams died with her in that parking garage. Her mother said it best at the sentencing hearing, her voice breaking with grief. Why is this second degree? Why does he get parole after 21 years? The courtroom had no good answer for her. At Maple's funeral, her mother saw something that would haunt her forever. When they dressed Maple's body for viewing, her beautiful hair had been carefully arranged to conceal her injuries. 11 times. 1 mark for each wound Gary had inflicted. Her mother kept asking why it required so much care, not fully comprehending the brutality of what had been done to her daughter. When the truth finally sank in, she called Gary what he truly was, a monster. Over 800 people attended Maple's memorial service. Friends, family, classmates, and complete strangers who'd been moved by her story. They came from all religions, all backgrounds, united in their grief and their outrage. The Batalia family had dressed Maple in the outfit she jokingly told her mother she wanted to wear on her wedding day. Instead, it became her funeral dress. Her father could barely speak at the service. When he did manage to get words out, he said that losing Maple felt like losing everything, that his most precious jewel was gone, and life had lost all meaning. His older daughter, Rosaline, had to step forward to speak on behalf of the family, her strength remarkable in the face of such devastating loss. But that strength came at a cost. Imagine being Rosaline, the surviving daughter, hearing your father say he's lost everything when you're still standing right there. The pain of losing her sister was compounded by the unintentional message that she wasn't enough to make life worth living anymore. The Batalia family, like so many families of murder victims, received a life sentence of their own. The justice system gave Gary Dhaliwal the possibility of freedom after 21 years, but Maple's family will never be free from their grief. They got a conviction, yes. But justice? That's debatable. And here's what makes this case particularly disturbing. The warning signs were everywhere. Gary had shown his violent jealousy at the Tim Hortons cafe, physically attacking Dylan in front of witnesses. He'd made over 2,000 calls to Maple's phone. He'd been stalking her relentlessly. Friends had urged Maple to get a restraining order, but the system failed to protect her before it was too late. And then, After she was murdered in the most tragic fashion imaginable, the system failed her again with inadequate sentencing. This case highlights a pattern we see far too often in violence against women. Men who view their partners as possessions. Men who cannot handle rejection. Men who escalate from controlling behavior to stalking to violence. And far too often, the justice system treats these crimes with shocking leniency. Gary Dhaliwal cheated on Maple. He ruined their relationship through his own actions. And when she rightfully ended things, he decided she deserved to die for it. That level of entitlement, that degree of narcissism, is truly staggering. Maple's story is tragically common. Every year, countless women are murdered by current or former intimate partners who can't accept that the relationship is over. The statistics are horrifying, and the sentences, as we've seen in this case, are often insultingly light. Today, Maple's family continues to honor her memory. They've established scholarships in her name for aspiring artists and medical students. They speak publicly about domestic violence and the importance of recognizing warning signs. Rosaline has become a powerful advocate for victims' rights, her eloquence and strength a testament to her sister's legacy. But no amount of advocacy brings Maple back. No scholarship can replace the contributions she would have made to the world. No memorial service can fill the hole her death left in her family's hearts. Sergeant Kevin Jeffrey, the officer who first found Maple dying in that parking garage and later had to tell her family she was gone, says this case will stay with him forever. The image of Maple's mother pulling his head down and screaming for vengeance is seared into his memory. He devoted over a year of his life to building the case against Gary Dhaliwal, and even he admits the final sentence felt inadequate. Gary Dhaliwal sits in prison today, waiting for his chance at parole. Gursamar Bedi is already free, having served his laughably short sentence and been released early for good behavior. Meanwhile, Maple Batalia remains 19 forever, her potential unfulfilled, her dreams unrealized, her family shattered. This case should enrage you. It should make you question how we value women's lives in our justice system. It should make you wonder how many Gary Dhaliwals are out there right now, stalking their ex-partners, escalating toward violence, while the system fails to intervene. If you or someone you know is experiencing stalking or domestic violence, please reach out for help. The warning signs in Maple's case were clear. Excessive calls and texts, showing up uninvited, jealous confrontations, escalating aggression. These behaviors don't get better on their own. They get worse. And sometimes they turn deadly. Maple Batalia deserved better. She deserved a justice system that protected her before she was murdered and punished her killer appropriately afterward. She deserved to live out her dreams, to become the doctor she aspired to be, to grace more screens with her acting talent. Instead, she became another name on the too long list of women killed by men who thought they owned them. Her mother was right. Justice doesn't bring peace when the victim is still gone. The verdict might have brought some closure, but Maple's chair at the dinner table remains empty. Her laughter no longer fills the house. Her parents will never see her graduate, never walk her down the aisle, never hold her children. Gary Dhaliwal took all of that away in a parking garage at 1:04 a.m. on September 27th, 2011. And the justice system, in its infinite wisdom, decided that 21 years was punishment enough for destroying so many lives. If you think that's justice, think again. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you or someone you know experienced stalking? How do you think the justice system should handle cases like this? Your voice matters in this conversation.